Well, hey everybody, my name is Jared Malott. I'm here with my good friend Mateo Cuiz, and this is the Coltist, a Colts Pacers podcast. This is episode number 44, and as a result of recency bias, sir, we have decided
Yeah,
episode 44 is dedicated to Zaire Franklin, who's having himself a hell of a season for our Indianapolis Colts this year.
yeah,
Uh,
he's leading the team in tackles. He's playing amazing in place of Shaq Leonard. Like Shaq Leonard's not being missed because of Zaire Franklin and his ability to play linebacker. And he's a team captain. He's overall a great player and a great find. But
and it,
we have to give the honorable mention to Dallas Clark.
yeah, absolutely. Played for the team for like 8 years. Is he a
Won a
Hall of
Super
Fame?
Bowl.
He won a Super
I don't know
Bowl.
if he's a Hall of Famer, but he won a Super Bowl. I believe he played like the coolest thing about him is he played without gloves, which is, that's really kick ass. The only player I can think about right now this year that plays without glove is Vita Bea,
Mhm.
and he's awesome too. Sorry for that, but yeah, Dallas Clark, he played without gloves, and that looks sick. Watching a tight end without gloves,
Yeah.
that's sick.
So yeah, we decided Zaire Franklin because he's, the currently the Colts one of the better defensive players the Colts have this year, and the defensive captain. But always got to give Dallas Clark his flowers when you get an opportunity. The dude is awesome.
Yeah,
Um, kind of an interesting day. Like you were kind of explaining. A couple articles came out today. Two actually, right?
yeah,
The first bombshell that came out today, um, Seth Wickersham, an ESPN Plus writer, uh, put out a massive article about Andrew Luck, um, which
great
was
read, like
which was an
great read.
incredible read. Probably going to need a thesaurus for that one. Um, and then also there was another article, and it was about Jeff Herrod, right?
Yeah, Jeff Herrod.
Yeah,
On the basically the long term implications of playing football for so much,
yeah,
and it's a theme that was like recently brought up to light. With all the stuff that happened, the concussion movie, and the NFL going towards a more long term sustainable approach for the players.
yeah.
But having a chance to watch firsthand like what it's like for a guy like I believe Jeff is like 50 years old, 60 years old, played like 30 years ago, and
Mhm.
the results it had on his body, and it's worthwhile. It's a good read. It's on the Athletic, so it's a
On
paid
the
read.
Athletic. Okay.
But no, no, we are not paid by them, but I strongly recommend the Athletic. Always great stuff put out
Yep.
there, like great reads, like
Mhm.
must have.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it was an eye-opening day. It's one of those days that makes you think, and the days that you realize, like, in my opinion, you realize like there is much more to football than the result that happened on Sunday. Like
Yeah.
there is much more going on than that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I makes you think, one of those days that leaves you, like I thought I had it all figured out,
Mhm.
and you clearly don't, and there is always like things that are happening that you don't know about. So humbling day, and a really good day, in my opinion, to be a football fan.
Yeah. I think I came away with what Andrew Luck's still looking for, a lot of clarity. Um I gotta kind of poke fun at this whole situation though. I did find it funny. Andrew Luck sought out a skier that's a rider
Yeah,
so that they could just swoop right over the fact that he dislocated his shoulder extreme skiing and we're talking about Andrew Luck while he was a starting franchise quarterback in the NFL. Probably something you don't need to be doing. But and I also found it amusing because it was such like high quality writing that they also glossed over the fact that or that not the fact they tried to say that, or they did say, I should probably say it like that, they did actually say that even though he hurt his right throwing shoulder in a skiing accident, it didn't actually cause further destabilization to the injuries he had already sustained. um and it's like, no, you just added another injury to the same side of the body, idiot. um but it makes you think. Like you said, when you sit and you think about how lucky Andrew Luck is to have gotten out before it got much worse for him. Let's
Yeah,
start there. The problem with Andrew Luck, we all know this. One, we were going to have this conversation one day, but we all know what the problem was, is that that guy had no desire whatsoever to save himself for anything. And if this next play was the last play he ever played, then fucking so be it. And he went at it like every down could literally be the last time I play football. And if I happen to get up, I'm going to shake that man's hand. And actually went out there and did it and put down some tape that it's going to take Colts fans a long time to get over that
yeah,
shit because he was solid when the organization was not solid. Like we bitch now, we're upset because the organization's solid and we don't have the man at quarterback. We have a guy who I is just fine. He's definitely starting quarterback in the NFL, right?
yeah,
He's on the outside looking in a Hall of Fame when his career is over. Matt Ryan, let's just talk about it, right? I'd argue his arms and his legs are shot. I'd argue the season's too long. I'd argue lots of teams in the NFL are hurting for quarterbacks.
yeah.
And
49ers right now.
Mhm. And it's fitting. I think it's really fitting that after Sunday, where like you watch like quarterback after quarterback go down, that this article came out today. I think it's great. It needs to come out because for far too many football fans and coaches, football players are just bodies to you. It's just like the American workforce. It's just like this capitalistic society we live in where everything gets turned into a fucking business. And the reality is that we're all fucking numbers until you are anything but a number.
Yeah, or
And
until it happens to
that's just
someone.
how the
Yeah,
fuck it is.
or
Until
it
you're
happens to someone
excellent.
close to you,
Yep.
or
Until it hits close to home.
it hits close to home, and it's. I
Yep.
don't want to get too political, but we were just talking about before we start recording. We were
Yeah.
talking about the corruption in the
Hmm.
FIFA World Cup, and just yeah, it's like you said. These are just bodies. These are just numbers. That's just it's just number two for the Colts. That's it. And until I believe we have to realize before it hits close to home, before it happens, like what if you had like what if your brother was playing in the NFL and he was like his mental health was suffering and he couldn't like he could be struggling to get up from bed
Yeah.
because of the injuries and because of the implications on his body. We have to, as fans, we have to get more educated. We have to realize that these are not just numbers. These are not like, let's
Yeah.
not fall into, like you said, the capitalistic model where workers are just numbers you put in into your little model and the cash flow comes out and all that. Like these are people. These are
Hmm.
people with families. These are people that have a life other than football. They have a life other than a job. They're not just that. Like Matt Ryan is not just number two for the Colts. That's a person. That's a father. That's a parent who has kids. Like we have to realize that. And I believe that this piece by
That's
Seth,
what.
talking about Andrew Luck, like it moved like it it got us forward in that way of thinking. It
Yeah.
that's why I thought it was such a nice piece because it has to educate people on these are guys that have lives.
Yeah. These are that football is just a thing they do. I one of the things that I've never really talked about this publicly, but hell, we might as well. So a couple years ago, after COVID had hit, I got approached by a company that was they had built an application where you could take a live sporting event and you could match up commentary off of an application. So you could just have your headphones on, be in a bar, watching a football game on TV, and listen to somebody like me commentate an Indianapolis Colts game, for example. That
Yeah,
was called Hot Mic. Okay. And this isn't me talking about shit about somebody or something. This isn't me talking shit about Hot Mic or anything. But the reality is, in sports commentary, you cannot do this by yourself. You have to have like a co-pilot, somebody, a co-star. There has to be somebody with you. And when I was getting into the money side of this business of being a sports commentator, they were going to pair me up with someone. And the best person that they could find for the job is a guy who's worked in news on the West Coast, like in Oregon and Washington State. And There was a job offer potentially on the table for one of these networks for me and this guy. And won't talk about the network because you never know what'll happen with life, so you got to keep your mouth shut, right? Won't talk about which network, but there was a potential deal on the table, and I'm talking like six figures for both of us. Me and my wife selling our house,
Yeah.
relocating, going to work for probably cover another team. Yeah, it was definitely another city covering another team. Um, and when we did the screen test, the guy didn't know shit. He couldn't tell you where these guys went to college, about how old they are. Couldn't tell you anything about them. Couldn't tell you how long they've been in the league. Couldn't tell you what last year was like for them, what they've looked like in recent games. Couldn't tell you none of that shit. Didn't do any of that work. Had a great voice. Great looking man. Made me look bad. Made me look bad. But when I thought about what a business, like a multi-million dollar business, was going to use me and pair me up with this person, and we were going to go work for a network on national fucking television. You're telling me the best man for the job isn't even a fucking fan? Are you out of your motherfucking mind? Oh no, he's the best on the teleprompter. And I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? What about the time where we have to fill in and I'm trying to say like, man, this is like his second good game in a row. What's he gonna do? Oh yeah, man. Yeah, pretty good. What? No, can't do it. Can't uproot my wife and I move across the country because you want the guy that's the best for the job is the best looking guy, not the guy that could tell you where this guy went to second grade. Like I want
Yeah.
somebody that's obsessed about the shit next to me talking about these athletes. And I get it. We've gone off on a tangent, but if you think about it, what was a billion-dollar entity absolutely willing to do? Put
Yeah, yeah,
someone on camera that doesn't even watch the games, doesn't even care about the sport, could care less. They're really good at reading a teleprompter, though. And you think about what you see on TV, right? And all the loudest mouthpieces on the biggest channels are non-athletes, right? We
yeah,
don't even name them on our podcast. We want them out of the industry, right? And a lot of the people that you hear speak and you're like, wow, I need more of that shit is like Pat McAfee, is like
yeah.
JJ Redick, for the record, the
Peyton
old man,
Manning.
Peyton Manning, right? And all these guys are
I
kind
would
of
even
doing
say,
it on
yeah,
their
I
own.
would even say, Draymond Green. Like,
Mhm.
I like hearing them. Like, it's informative. It's educational. You're like, I'm getting, instead of, yeah, we're not gonna name them. We're not gonna give them the recognition. Like, but we all know which broadcasters we're talking about. Like, we all know who they are.
Mhm. Oh yeah, like Stephen A. Smith,
Yeah,
you know, guys I don't want
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
give oxygen to. They view those relationships. Those boys are paper mache to you. That you don't matter. The moment you get injured, you're forgotten. You're just a number until you've been doing this for a number of years. And the media is super disrespectful to players. And I've been saying it. And you've been around me for years. And what I've been saying, like these players are like people. They're like real important people too. They're like important figures in your community. And we treat them like numbers. Now they get treated by numbers by the corporation that owns them, the shield that they all protect, right? And then you see like a guy like Andrew Luck, like a generational talent, walk away from this game.
Yeah. He just goes out and challenges everything we like. That is the first time, like, it was the only two guys I can think about, retiring in their prime. It's him and Calvin Johnson Jr. Those are the only two guys, like, it just doesn't happen. And it was just, I believe, it was the most, like, he could have won six Super Bowls, seven Super
Oh yeah,
Bowls. I believe him retiring early was the most important thing he did for the sport, like even more important than winning
six
multiple
Super
Super
Bowls.
Bowls with the
Yeah,
Colts, because he showed, he by doing that, by retiring, he showed, something that was really wrong with football.
yeah.
Like,
That
he
that
he shed some light on the shittiest subject in the sport.
yeah. I mean,
And
I remember early on in Andrew Luck's career, I remember, and you can ask my wife, and you can ask Brett, where I complained that they're treating Andrew Luck like Houston treated that carboy. David Carr.
Yeah.
They drafted that guy. He was supposed to be the next big thing, and he got killed. And
Yeah.
it's because for the longest time, once you get your franchise quarterback, you just let him go. And you hear about how much pressure is on a franchise quarterback from Andrew Luck and how hard that is to do. And you think about like, man, we're just doing it all wrong, right? All of it's wrong. There's so much pressure being placed on the people that are doing the most vital of things that we're not stopping to think a moment about the toll that what you're asking these people to do, who we've reduced to a number on a jersey, on a uniform, on a team representing a town. That's what we've reduced people to, you know? It's like when I talk to people on the phone and I help them with their health care and they say something over the course of the conversation. You don't mean to be disrespectful. They say shit like, "Oh, you're just an insurance agent." And I say, "Yeah. When's the last time your insurance agent saved you $5,000 a year?
Yeah.
Is that what your insurance agent did for you? I'm God, right? What's any other person you've ever worked with done for you in business? Oh, they took money from you. I gave it to you. But that's what we reduce workers to. I'm just a fucking insurance agent. Honey, I handled your entire healthcare situation in 30 minutes. The years of my education that I applied to this conversation got us to that result in that time frame. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm just an insurance agent. Fuck you. Andrew Luck's just a fucking quarterback. Fuck you. Seth Wickersham's just a writer, by the way. Fuck you. That man deserves an award. That was a hell of an article.
Yeah, that was a
And
hell of an article.
And like I said, I think it was very timely because of what happened on Sunday, right? And we're not even talking about the Colts, right? We're talking about if you watch the NFL games on Sunday, I counted six. I don't know about you. There's like a half dozen quarterbacks injured during games on Sunday. Um,
Yeah.
and it's gonna keep Lamar Jackson, Jimmy G, right? Um, obviously, when we get to we could talk about the Colts and what's going on with them, but you can already tell like that season's lost. Like we're talking about other stuff now. The reality for the Colts at 4-8-1, having done just about everything on paper in a football game that you could say they gave a game away,
Yeah.
right? This was a 6 point contest going into the fourth, and Dallas rattled off a 33-0 run. And if you watch a lot of those scoring plays for Dallas late in that contest, that looked an awful lot like a Colts player giving up. That looked an awful lot like saving it. That looked an
Yeah.
awful lot like a lost season to me. And it's very difficult because you got to protect the shield. So no teams are tanking, no teams are intentionally losing. Um, I think that I'm again still saying it. I'm still glad Frank Reich's not here. I'm glad that
Yeah.
it's somebody that you will forever tie to this organization, no matter what happens. I feel no love lost for Jeff Saturday. A lot of people have commented about him missing some shit, right? About not throwing a challenge and thinking that's a pivotal moment. And that's not the fucking point. So, and we need to get that in our gullet. Like you just got to accept that like he's not calling the timely timeout. He's not calling the timely challenge. We're not in these games. We're just trying to get through them. Because as we realized today with Andrew Luck, we don't care enough about who these people are anyway. A lot of these guys ain't gonna be playing here anyway. So these games aren't gonna be fun. If you don't have the perspective of like we're just lucky to fucking be here, man.
Yeah.
If you really don't have that attitude about this, it's gonna be a hard watch because it's not gonna be pretty. Because there's a lot of teams in the NFL that are on the cusp of making the playoffs, and the Colts got a few of them ahead of them, right? So I keep saying it, like the hits don't stop coming. The only like
Yeah.
winnable game on that schedule is Houston, and again, not that you won't win that or will, right? It's no guarantee, but on the path to that, there is attrition. And that's what we were talking about before this contest or before this podcast. Same thing, right? Um, Football is a war of attrition. There are bodies at stake. There are people at stake,
Yeah.
and you're very limited on how many of them you get on Sunday, right? It was like 46, right? It really comes down
Yeah,
to
46 on Sunday. Yeah.
22 starting players and then like a handful of specialists, right? Like a yeah, you really super super limited. I guess yeah, starters, backups, that's 44, right?
Yeah.
Two players if you have two players at every position. Um yeah, I'm still, you know, I'm always going to show concern because there's like 3 games left that have no meaning that you're probably going to lose that could cost you people. And then like the one winnable game, is that even worth?
Yeah, it's the end. Yeah, it's the end of the season.
Yeah. And so, it's hard not to just look ahead. I did see a top 10 list that the Colts are on today that I liked and that they were currently ninth in the draft order.
Yeah.
Um, um, and that made me smile. It was like this is the only top 10 list I want to see the Colts on the rest of the year. Um, but yeah, man, I definitely empathize greatly. I had a lot of people reach out to me saying reading that Andrew Luck article today, um, wanting to know how I felt about it and if I'd read it. And like I said, I found it very calming for me to see that Andrew Luck, and it isn't even just Andrew Luck, the quarterback. It's Andrew Luck, the architect from Stanford,
Yeah,
that
Stanford
I
University.
always wondered what would happen to him afterward. Or what happens to the architect from Stanford when he's done being a quarterback in the NFL? And the answer is that he goes back to Stanford and becomes a high school teacher and football coach. And I'm with that. I go back to school January 1st, my friends. So I don't know if I told you that, but I'd applied, been accepted. I'm going back to school January 1st. My initial intent's analytics, but we'll see. You never know
Yeah,
what'll
it's
happen.
great.
I definitely want to get into. I've been training to be a coach for a little over a year now. And the my mentor Harrison Bernstein from Soldiers to Sidelines has told me like we got to get you coaching like January. So I'm gonna probably join AFCA, American Football Coaches Association, um, and probably hit up an AFC meeting and then AFCA and trying to get a job, trying to get on somebody's staff. I don't necessarily care about the money, but I care about the quality of the opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Like not just taking anything. Because if I just don't take anything, I just go get involved with a local high school, right? But like, and my wife and I've actually talked about moving, about like uprooting our us and our dogs, right, to go be a coach somewhere. So yeah, I mean, like this is super close to home, right? It was like this guy you had no knowledge of what was really going on with Andrew Luck like until today. Like and you finally got to see
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
he's not in Indiana anymore, he moved back to Sao Paulo. Um that didn't even sound right.
Palo Alto.
Palo Alto. Thank you. Sao Paulo's in Brazil, Palo Alto's
Yeah.
in Northern California. Sorry. Um but yeah, moved back home. That sounds like about like home, even though he went to high school in Texas. But I guess that's where him and his wife decided to settle down. Like, sounds like a more likely. Um, so he could go back to Stanford. It just like I said, just the thought of him with a backpack on, with a little Stanford baseball hat on, like you know what I mean, like a looking like a
Yeah, it gives you.
looking like
Yeah,
a dingy freshman all over again. Um,
it's a nice picture to
it's like a
have.
nice picture of Andrew Luck in
Yeah.
your mind. Um, because I saw him hurting a lot. You know.
Yeah, you could tell.
You could tell that the game was taking a different kind of toll. Um, and again, it's not like you watched his play suffer. Like he was going through all that and playing well. and like leading a team and they were winning, and it makes you realize like how not important winning is, how not important playing well. It's not important to be like
Yeah.
great all the time. Like that's not important. You are not, one of the things that bothers me a lot is like people say availability is your best ability. And it's like balance is your best power. Not show up every single day at 5 a.m. and grind it out until midnight. That's not what makes you great. Like that's not it. And there's
Yeah.
so many people out there that are willing to grind themselves out from 5 a.m. to midnight every day, or even just like parts of no part of your life is worth grinding for. There's none of that. That grind shit is bullshit. It just it's just about time I come out of that. I come out of wherever I was in and say it. Like people are vital. Every single individual willing to put on a uniform for you is vital. And until you start treating them like that, the, you know what I think? Andrew Luck empowered a bunch of athletes.
Yeah.
They read
Yeah.
that
Definitely
shit.
agree on.
A
Yeah.
lot of them, a lot of them probably immediately went back and applied to go back to school and probably said like, I didn't understand a lot of what was going on in that article. I need a lot of clarity here. I'm gonna go back to school so I can learn some new words
Yeah.
just so I can figure out what the fuck happened. Um, but yeah, and then like you said, the article about Herrod and being a former linebacker and linebacker defensive lineman for the Colts and having a lot of sub concussions over the course of a long football career, and what did it do to you? Again, it has a lot to do with how we used to teach this game. I remember when I was a little kid, defensive coordinators talking about taking his head off, and I saw a lot of that shit when I was in high school, a lot of cheap shot and a lot of dirty play. And then I see it a lot in the NFL when teams are behind and they're the better team and they're getting
Yeah.
thoroughly outplayed. They'll start cheap shotting players. And I'm thinking of about a couple years ago when we were beating the Seahawks pretty bad. And then the second half of that game, I felt like they just started like trying to hurt people. And when you got guys that are playing like that, it's visible on the field. You could see it. And like I said, I don't have like a years of coaching experience that I can stand on, but like I've been on enough of a sideline to tell you like it takes a great deal of ability to separate yourself from reality to not like it really hurt your heart when one of your guys gets banged when they just get hurt and they're on the field laying on the ground and like you just wonder like is it for you, like is that your football career's over now? That's what you think about, like a guy lands at the bottom of the pile and you just don't get up
Yeah.
and you're just like, oh shit, like is that a leg, a back, an arm, whatever, right? You're thinking about like that guy's vital, I need that, right? I need that person here, because like the biggest thing for me is when I was coaching football, I was coaching semi-pro football, so these guys all have careers, right? So when they get hurt, it's just over for you now. Now you just got to go work and you got to go to your job. But along the lines of something you said, but a lot of people had reached out to me around the time that Andrew Luck tired and retired, and they'd questioned like how could you quit? A lot of people are pissed at Andrew Luck for retiring in his prime and feel like it set this organization back for a decade. Fuck this organization. Fuck the Colts, man. Like Andrew Luck's more important than the Colts are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Much more important.
and
Yeah.
if you don't understand that, if that doesn't vibe with where you are, and you're like, nah, man, I'm Colts for life. You're a capitalist, and you've picked a corporation, an entity over an individual that you can't replace. That Colts team could piss you off, and you'd go root for someone the fuck else, and don't act like you wouldn't. But Andrew Luck's no longer on anyone's team. Now he's just a person. And we got to like see who that guy really is. And you're like, I like that guy. Do you think he'd be the same person if he'd have played the last like 4 or 5 years? Do you have a clearer picture of why that article is so important now? Because there's a lot of football players that are at that point in their life where Eric Ebron came to mind when I interviewed Eric Ebron, and he was having like a really good year. At the time that I interviewed him, he was leading the NFL in touchdowns. He had 8 touchdowns when I went and met him at IPS.
Yeah.
It was like a snowy night. I had no business leaving my house. My wife and I drove to an IPS high school, and he went and sat down, me and his mom, in like another building where you had to be led by security. It was like craziest shit you've ever met in your life, so that I could sit down in front of a professional athlete and he even tell me about how um, I wanted to do something with my mom, and it's hard enough just to get my mom to come around me because I'm an NFL football, and I chose this life. And she doesn't quite understand it, but you do. So I wanted to have you help my mom realize what's going on because, like, you think about Eric Ebron's career and that year he had here, and then he really had some trajectory there, right? There was some amplitude he was trying to get, and that's what I was there to do, is to interview him. Something to do with Campbell's Soups, something to do with Eric
Yeah.
Ebron and his little staff and his little team of people teaching a bunch of high school kids how to um, like grocery shop, prepare a meal, set the table. And when I was in, the reason I'm bringing all this up is because I was interviewing him, and I remember talking about a lot of the fans were really upset at that. If you can recall that year that Eric Ebron was here with what was going on, and I felt like a lot of our problems were injury related, and that we just had like horrible run of luck and injuries. And I asked him to speak to it. Like, can you speak to the Colts? Like you're having a great deal of personal success, but like the team isn't. Can you
Yeah.
speak to that? And he said, you get told from the day that you get on campus that availability is your best ability, and that your willingness to show up every day and try to get better, um, and then showing up at every game healthy and ready to play. It helps you get the job at the
Yeah.
next level. And then once you get like to the NFL now, and now you get paid millions of dollars, there's no days off now. Now this goes from something I love to do that I was really good at, that I got the ability to play in college, to now it's a job. And I also want to point out, like, we well, as poors, we don't have any concept of money, but I also want to make sure people realize how not important fucking money is. For a lot of these players, they spend a considerable portion of their income on their bodies. Like shit that just like is not reusable, that just
Yeah.
has a straight cost. It can't be replaced, and you got to keep buying it. And again, I think like for the longest time, I mean, think about some of the movies they've created about football, or some of the TV that they've created about football, talking about how guys would like shoot themselves up full of shit so they could go play, bro. Um,
Yeah.
and that toughness shit, and then people, there's like toughness, and you got to play through injury, and there's this whole toxic mentality about sports, especially violent sports like football, that it's like you said, it's not sustainable. You asked
Yeah.
earlier when we were just chatting before we started recording, it's not. It can't keep
Yeah. You
being.
can't sustain it. Yeah.
You can't have a camp body quarterback that you allow your defensive players to hit. You can't, and this is at any level of football. This isn't just like the NFL. Um, the guy that isn't the guy for you, the guy that steps in when that guy's breathing hard, he's also a person.
Yeah.
And if you don't nurture that guy, he's not pushing your backups who aren't pushing your starters, and your team's stale as fuck. So people are also have been talking shit. Where the fuck is Nick Foles and all this mess? What the fuck happened with Sam Ellinger? Um, Jeff Saturday is trying to protect a lot of people, and Jeff Saturday was hired specifically to support these players that are going through some shit. Because remember, this team is supposed to be competitive year in and year out. This team was supposed to be pretty good, not at
Yeah.
best 8-1 right now, by the way. I just realized I did the math in my head. The best the Colts could finish right now is 8-1. Is that what you thought was going to
Yeah.
happen?
No. Nah. Yeah. Not at all.
And so I think Jeff Saturday was brought in because he had enough outside experience, enough leverage, enough other people that aren't Colts players or Colts franchisees or guys that are willing to hold the flag for the corp, right? Um, the reality is like Jeff Saturday, I think I said this our last podcast. I firmly believe Jeff Saturday was just brought in to make sure that nobody else did what Andrew Luck did, because that's the fear.
Yeah.
If you're Jim Irsay, my fear is that him toiling, or is that the word I want to use there? Tinkering is probably better.
Yeah, tinkering. Yeah.
Tinkering with the way your team was run there and pushing Sam Ellinger into start, that very clearly felt like a Jim Irsay decision, as does a lot of these things. Seems like they come from Jim Irsay. They don't seem anyway. Um, so when you uh when you fire a guy like Frank Reich, who's clearly got the chops for the gig,
Yeah.
I think I said that before. He got fired to protect him because he still had a winning record as a head coach. And right up until that week before he got fired, he looked pretty competent.
Yeah.
And then it's like if you let him coach this season out and he comes away from this season as a 500 ball coach, what what good quarterback's going to want to come here? Really? Now, I'd also argue now that Jim Irsay's tinkered with your team and shit, what good player is going to want to come here? But many people have talked about that already. Um, like I said, I think that you need these athletes to have their voices be heard. That you need guys to be having podcasts and talking about what's
Yeah.
going on with them and what this life is like. And I hate to be like that because because I have a lot of friends that are in media, but the only people who I care about what they have to say outside of whatever they do is like pro athletes. You know what I mean? Guys that you're already watching them, and then it's like you were talking about earlier, talking about Draymond Green having a podcast. Um, I was listening to JJ Redick, right, when he started Old Man in the Three. Um, yeah, their perspective is so unique
Yeah.
because
So refreshing.
they've been in it, and they're not the guys that are hunting for um quips to throw out and try to say something catchy and quippy so that it can get clipped up and thrown on TikTok or whatever to get more views. You know, I think a lot of the posturing that's done by a lot of these media types for attention, it's you say something salacious and then it gets you that attention, and then it gets you the attention from the individual, and then you get to establish a rapport with them. And when you're
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm just bringing up your name, that any press is good press, right? I'm not a believer in that. I'm of the you only want good press, and when you start getting bad press, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
There's far too many people in media that will give press, right? They'll just start saying your name and talking about you, and ain't no reason to do that. And it's just like there have been other players since Andrew Luck's left the league that have come into the league, not been protected or treated like a franchise quarterback. I could say a guy like Mitch Trubisky. I feel like he got a
Yeah.
dumb short leash. He had super success early in his career. He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL, and then he got laid off, right? And then he literally just like they lost all their faith in him. And it's just crazy to me because it felt like they didn't used to be like that. They used to let a guy rot. You know what I mean? They used to give you a good long look. Um, and then
Yeah. Now it's just like, yeah.
I also want to touch on there's one of the things I have noticed is there's a renaissance on quarterbacks this year that hadn't been getting an opportunity that are having a lot of success. Geno Smith comes to mind.
Yeah. Geno Smith, Daniel Jones. Well, Daniel
Mhm.
Jones had the chance, but Geno, I believe, is the
Comeback
like,
player of the year.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Colts obviously like we've been saying, 4-8-1, not in a great spot. Coming up, let's see here.
Bye week, and then it's the Vikings, I believe, or the Chargers.
Oh yeah. And then how about them Pacers while we're on
Yeah, coming off a great win against the Warriors. Like I still, watching the Pacers, I still believe we are due for some regression, perhaps. Like I don't think we're going to finish as the fourth or fifth seed.
Hmm.
I would be surprised if we finish that high.
Hmm.
But it's just like we are not supposed to like to finish that high. I was expecting a top three top three pick in the draft next year.
Hmm.
So watching the young guys go and they play as a team. Rick Carlisle is coaching his ass off. Like he's
Hmm.
doing a great job with such a young roster.
Yeah.
And watching the guys play and watching how they are happy for each other's success and how they are they're playing like a team. It reminds me of the Pacers of the early Paul George era Pacers, where it was Hibbert and David West and George Hill, where it was like everyone was so easy to root for,
Hmm.
and you want those guys to play well, and you feel like represented by these guys. Like
Yeah.
they play hard, they stand up for each other, they are unselfish, they work their ass off, they have accountability, like they put in the work, and it resulted in a product that I fell in love with. Like I really like this Pacers team.
Yeah. I thought early they lost their like first three games, and I agree with you. In those first few games, I didn't feel like they had an actual identity. They didn't have a real good, very real good rotation. And then, like you said, Rick Carlisle really has a great feel for this rotation and when to put in his spark plugs, in Matherin and O'Connell.
Yeah,
Um,
TJ McConnell.
yeah, TJ McConnell and Matherin are just they have a different level of energy and confidence. And it's unique when you put your bench in and they're a lift for you. A lot of benches are giveaways, right? They come on the floor and they start giving up buckets and back-to-back buckets and then not being offensively efficient. And they're just getting two for one constantly, right? And they'll let a team right back in it. And you have to put your stars back in to get you back out ahead so you can breathe a
Yeah,
little. And the Pacers, the thing about that is, it's kind of been something I've been sitting on for a while. And when I think about this concept, I think about Kwity Paye. And I think about last year, about how in his rookie year, I honestly felt like he was beating people. Like he was getting
yeah,
behind the tackle. And that's doesn't happen. And I felt like he had a quarterback dead to rights, and it was almost like he couldn't be the man yet, right? And it's like when you watch the Pacers play, you're like, it's okay to be the man,
yeah,
right? And have a big game. And it can be anyone on any night. And but greatness isn't something that you just show up and do. It's something you do every fucking day, every fucking game. So that's the thing about the Pacers that you're seeing in real time. Every player in that rotation is important and getting important minutes, and they're getting to their spot on the floor. They're getting their shot, and then you see how offensively efficient they are for how young a roster they are, and you realize like
yeah,
what can you do over time together? And then what you'll see is like they're super offensively efficient. And when you're that offensive, that doesn't just go away. So to answer your question, because you asked kind of like I don't think you can sustain. I don't think they're gonna be like very good, right? They're gonna finish as a four. No, as long as there aren't any major injuries, they should actually get better because they're already the most offensively, or one of the, I think they're top three in offensive efficiency in the NBA,
yeah,
if I remember correctly. They can only get better defensively, which just means that all that pressure that they apply, and I say like halfway, three-quarters way through the first quarter into the second quarter, they have so much more energy than the opponent does. They come back from 20-point deficits in the second quarter, and you're like, what the fuck? Oh, it's because they have all these young players out there, all this new energy, and it's just they can just switch up on you, switch a whole five out on you. And there are teams that can't go 10 deep in the NBA.
yeah,
And it really feels like the Pacers show up with 13 guys every night that really are going to give you some minutes. And you know, one of the things that the NBA has become is like a three fest, right? And what the Pacers focus on doing is hit your layups, like get the ball inside, hit these easy shots so that the defense feels like they got to play at the bucket. They got to stop you from dunking on their ass. And that just allows you to be unselfish because now the defense just collapses anytime anyone drives and it's a kick to a wide open shooter. You're gonna destroy people because nobody they can't figure out who the man is because you think about I was reading a book about being a defensive coordinator, by the way, and it was talking about how to game plan for the opponent, and it was like it was literally talking about the Rams last year and how they won the Super Bowl by guessing,
Yeah.
and there are also teams that have the thought process to like isolate a player and always like bracket cover or the certain receiver and try to limit them. Um, and you think about how you build these game plans either to isolate or bracket or lock out a player, right? You'll build this game plan for the opponent, but you won't watch over your generational talent at quarterback to the degree that he retires at 30. You know what I mean? Like we do far more work in preparation like for an enemy than we do trying to take care of our own. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
when we talk about these Pacers, as long as they're healthy, like they should get better. They were 12-8 in their first 20, 4 games above 500, which lends itself to like a 48-ish game win a year, which puts you in the playoffs. But like you said, no expectation of getting like a 4 or 5 seed. You wouldn't see in a 20 game stretch a team going 12-8, it's now going like 16-4, right? That's not going to happen. I don't necessarily expect more of the same or even more, just a little better. But since going 12-8, I think they 12-8 the last time we recorded.
Yeah.
I think they're 2-2 since.
Yeah. 2-2. Yeah.
I think they're 14-10 now. On a road, I think we said if they got 3 wins on this
Yeah.
seven
Three
game
wins
road,
would be happy.
and then one of those wins is against Golden State. And when you think about a franchise that is doing it correctly, and again, if you think about what did Golden State do? They drafted well, they developed their talent, and they let it flourish. And those Golden State players are not just numbers, right? Like if you
Yeah.
really think about Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, those aren't just basketball players to that city, to that organization, to the league. That's not how they're seen and treated. Um, and I don't think that there aren't NBA players that are seen and treated like NBA players are seen and treated. Only quarterbacks, only elite quarterbacks. There's like a handful of guys in the league anybody cares about. Everybody else is just a number. And it's the same thing in a lot of walks of life. Like there's very few of us that actually matter, and very few of us that actually matter. Fewer than you believe, right? And we're just lucky right now that
Yeah.
the Pacers are interesting, and that they keep finding themselves in precarious situations and being able to lift themselves out of it with their youth and their athleticism, their speed with the ball in their hand, down up and down the floor. It's hard for some of these clubs to manage because they're older and they're bigger. They're taking longer to get up the floor and get back in their defense. So like I said, I'm not going to sit on a podcast and fluff the Pacers.
Yeah.
This was a team like you just got done saying. I thought at the beginning of the year, like we could have like another good draft pick. We could like be real good,
Yeah.
right? And now I'm like, you could get to the playoffs and maybe win a series this year, and then next year
Imagine next year. Yeah.
contend with even and the reason that you say that is because Nemhard, right?
Yeah.
Not was he not drafted or is he a sec? I can't remember if he's a
Second. Yeah.
second round pick.
31st overall pick. Yeah.
There you go.
First pick of the second round.
First pick of the second round. There you go. So you wouldn't expect a guy like that to give you 30. And it's not that Golden State Warriors don't take him seriously. It's like player development, personnel management is vital. And that Nemhard was like 12th, 13th, 14th on that team. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like not a rotational player. Um, he's not even part of that second unit and has worked his way into
The
the
starting lineup.
rotation,
Yeah.
into the starting lineup. Um, when you have people that are clearly being developed well, right? That they become a case study in how you're supposed to treat people and athletes, right? And I think that's the lesson I'll take from today, right? That I'll
Yeah.
take from all the big things that happened today. It was like you were telling me before the show. It's like this is like one of the most impactful days on me as like you said this as like a
Yeah.
sports fan. Um, with this stuff going on with the World Cup being hosted in Qatar, where thousands of people died building the stadiums they're playing in that will be torn down when this event is over, and how hard it is to be a football fan,
Yeah. Right now.
the world's game, how hard it is to be a fan when Qatar is hosting this, um, who will literally kill you for being
Yeah.
gay,
Just to build.
right? So there's just to build a stadium, they again just don't care about people, let thousands of people die.
Yeah.
Thousands of heads of family were forced to do that. And to have that all going on while this article about Andrew Luck comes out, it really hits home. It
Yeah. It
really
does. Yeah.
it reminds you, like Chris Shepard said earlier today, at the end of all of it, football does not matter.
Yeah.
At the end of all of it, it's not the football that you'll remember. So yeah, that's probably a good way to end
Yeah.
this
To
one.
finish it off. Yeah.
Um, I appreciate anybody that takes the time to listen to the content that we create. We'll see you after next week's game.
Yeah. See you next week.